The story begins on a typical day in the city center. Darnell, a young black man, was on his way to a part-time job after school. He lived in a poor neighborhood but always tried to work hard to support his family. That day, the weather was chilly, and strong winds made everyone shiver. Trees along the street swayed violently. Dry leaves scattered across the ground, and the gray atmosphere made the city gloomier than usual. Darnell wore a thin jacket, his hands buried deep in his pockets to ward off the biting cold. As Darnell walked past a street corner, he happened to notice an elderly woman sitting on the sidewalk, trembling from the cold. She was dressed in worn, thin clothing, her wrinkled face showing clear signs of fatigue and confusion. Beside her was a tattered fabric bag, seemingly all she had. Passers-by hurried along, paying her no mind, as if she were just an unnoticeable part of the street. Darnell's heart filled with compassion, and he couldn't bear to leave the elderly woman out in the harsh cold. He stopped, approached her, and gently asked, "Ma'am, are you all right?" His voice was filled with genuine concern. The elderly woman looked up at Darnell with clouded eyes, her face momentarily reflecting fear. But then she nodded slightly, her voice trembling. I don't know where I am. I'm so cold." Seeing her situation, Darnell couldn't just walk away. It felt as though it were his own grandmother in need. He couldn't leave her like this. He decided to help her, hoping to do something to get her out of this difficult situation. Darnell softly said, "Ma'am, let me help you. It's too cold for you to be sitting here. I'll find a warmer place for you. All right?" The elderly woman looked at him, her eyes welling up with tears, unable to speak, and only nodded slightly. Darnell gently helped her to her feet, noticing how weak she was, barely able to stand on her own. He carefully supported her step by step, his heart full of concern. Darnell led the elderly woman to a small diner nearby. It was a place he often stopped by after work. He knew they had warm, affordable meals, perfect for his modest budget. As they entered, a small bell chimed to announce their arrival, and the delicious aroma from the kitchen filled the air, making the atmosphere feel less chilly. He guided her to a corner table and ordered a hot bowl of soup and a warm cup of tea to help her regain some strength. As the elderly woman took the bowl of soup, her trembling hands tugged at Darnell's heartstrings. She lifted the spoon, slowly bringing each spoonful to her mouth. Her lips quivered, but as the warmth of the food spread, her face gradually looked more at ease. Darnell sat beside her, quietly watching her take each careful spoonful, noticing a slight brightness return to her eyes and the fear slowly fading from her gaze. While she ate, Darnell stayed silent, not wanting to make her feel any more anxious. His eyes followed her every movement. As she finished most of her soup, Darnell gently asked, "Do you remember your name? Or is there anyone you can contact?" The elderly woman shook her head, her voice filled with worry and despair. "I don't remember. I can't remember anything. I only know that I'm lost and don't know the way back home." Darnell could feel the fear in her voice. He tried to reassure her. "It's okay, ma'am. I'll help you find your family. Don't worry." She looked at him with gratitude, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "Thank you truly. Thank you so much," she said, her voice choked with emotion. Darnell felt a special connection with her, as if he were helping a family member. He felt a deep sense of responsibility for her, knowing he couldn't leave her alone in this situation. The night had deepened, and the air grew even colder. The wind swept through every corner of the streets, carrying a chill that made the atmosphere feel desolate and lonely. Darnell knew it was unsafe to leave the elderly woman out on the street like this. He decided to bring her to his home to stay for the night. Darnell's house was a simple but cozy place in a small alley where he lived with his mother and younger sister. Although Darnell's family wasn't well off, they always lived with generosity and hospitality. When Darnell brought the elderly woman home, his mother, Clara, was quite surprised. Clara was a middle-aged woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. She was sitting and mending one of Darnell's old shirts when she saw him bringing a stranger into their home. "Darnell, who is this?" Clara asked, her voice filled with surprise but also a touch of concern. Darnell explained the story, from how he had seen the elderly woman on the street to her inability to remember anything about herself. After hearing Darnell's account, Clara immediately agreed to let the woman stay. "Oh dear, she must have gone through so much. She can stay here tonight, and we'll find a way to help her tomorrow," Clara said, looking at the elderly woman with deep compassion. Clara prepared a warm sleeping area for her in the living room. She took an old mattress, spread it on the floor, and added a thick blanket to keep her warm on the cold night. Darnell's younger sister, little Mia, helped by bringing over a pillow and a sweater she cherished. Mia, around 8 years old, had big, round eyes and an innocent smile. She looked at the elderly woman with curiosity and gently asked, "Grandma, are you hurting anywhere?" The elderly woman was so moved that she couldn't speak. She could only grasp Clara's and Darnell's hands, with tears welling up once again. Clara softly said, "Please rest, ma'am. Tomorrow, we'll find a way to help you." The elderly woman nodded, her voice choked with emotion as she whispered her thanks. That night, Darnell lay in bed, unable to fall asleep. He thought about the elderly woman and wondered what she must have gone through. How an elderly person like her could end up in such a situation. He also thought about what he could do to help her, promising himself that no matter how challenging it was, he would do his best to help her find her family. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the window, Darnell woke up to find the elderly woman already up, sitting by the window with a contemplative expression. The sunlight highlighted the wrinkles and marks of time on her face. Darnell approached her with a smile and asked, "Did you sleep well?" She turned to him and, unexpectedly, said, I think I remember something." Darnell sat beside her and gently asked, "What do you remember?" She slowly recounted, "I remember a big house with a garden full of flowers and a son. I remember his face, but not his name." She raised her hand to her forehead, trying hard to recall, but the memories seemed too faint, leaving her feeling confused and helpless. Her eyes became distant, as though reaching for memories long forgotten. Darnell listened intently, understanding that her memories might be clues to finding her family. He spoke gently, "Take your time. There's no need to force it. I believe we'll find a way." She looked at Darnell with affection, lightly grasping his hand and saying, "You're so kind. Thank you very much." Clara brought over a cup of hot tea, sat down next to the elderly woman, and began to chat. Clara's warm and gentle way of speaking made the woman feel more at ease. During the conversation, she recalled a few more details, like once having a piano in her house and how she used to play it every morning for her son. Though small, these details were precious clues to Darnell, hints that might help them find her family. After breakfast, Darnell decided to take her to the police station for assistance. He knew it would be the best place to start gathering information about her. Clara agreed and reminded Darnell to be careful. Before they left, Clara gave the elderly woman a scarf to keep her warm. The woman held Clara's hand tightly, saying with emotion, "Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude." Clara simply smiled. "It's nothing, we're all human, and we need to help each other in times of need." Darnell guided the elderly woman out of the house, and they walked slowly down the quiet street. The morning air was still crisp, but the sunlight had begun to shine, bringing a glimmer of hope for the new day. Darnell resolved to do everything he could to help her reunite with her family. His heart was filled with determination and a sense of responsibility. Although the path ahead might be challenging, he believed that with love and patience, they could overcome anything. Darnell and the elderly woman arrived at the police station that morning. The station was located in the city center, a place where people often came to report incidents and seek help. Darnell led the elderly woman inside, where the atmosphere was serious and busy, with officers and civilians moving in and out. He approached the reception desk, where a female officer was working. "Hello. I need assistance," Darnell said, his tone filled with urgency. "I found this elderly woman lost on the street, and she doesn't remember anything about her family. Can you help us?" The officer looked at the elderly woman with sympathy, then asked Darnell and the woman to wait for a moment. They sat down on a hard wooden bench, and while they waited, Darnell tried to keep the woman from feeling too anxious by chatting with her. He told her about small things in his life, like his part-time job at a restaurant and how his family lived a simple but close-knit life. A little while later, another officer approached them, asking the elderly woman to fill in some basic information. However, it was clear that she couldn't remember her name, age, or any details about herself. The officer asked additional questions, and Darnell tried to assist in answering, but the little she remembered made identifying her very challenging. After recording all the information, the officer told Darnell they would search through missing person reports to try and locate her family. "We'll do our best to help her," the officer assured him. "Thank you for bringing her here." Darnell felt somewhat relieved, knowing that the elderly woman was now in the hands of experienced people who might be able to reunite her with her family. On his way home, Darnell felt a bit of comfort. He had done everything he could to help her, and now all he could do was hope they would find her family soon. However, he couldn't shake the worry, wondering if she would truly be able to reunite with her loved ones. The fragmented memories she had shared lingered in his mind, like pieces of a puzzle yet to be solved. After leaving the elderly woman at the police station, Darnell returned to his usual routine. He attended school in the mornings and worked afternoons at a small restaurant. The job was tough, but for Darnell, it was the only way to earn some extra money for his family. His coworkers often joked that he worked too hard, but Darnell knew he had no other choice. His mother, Clara, had worked tirelessly all her life to raise him and his sister, and now it was his turn to share that responsibility. The days passed quietly, but Darnell couldn't stop thinking about the elderly woman. He wondered if she had found her family yet and if she still remembered him. Images of her faded eyes and wrinkled face kept appearing in his mind. He felt a connection to her, as if an invisible thread linked them, and he couldn't help but worry about her well-being. One evening after finishing work, Darnell received a call from the police station. The officer from before informed him that they had managed to contact her family. "You've helped her so much, and her family wants to thank you," the officer said. Darnell felt an indescribable joy, as if a weight had been lifted from his heart. He knew the elderly woman was safe, and that was the most important thing. A few days later, on a weekend morning, Darnell was at home with his mother and sister when he unexpectedly heard the doorbell ring. He opened the door and was astonished to see a luxurious Rolls Royce parked outside. The car gleamed, with its black paint and chrome details shining under the sunlight. A well-dressed man in a suit stepped out of the car, holding an envelope in his hand. "Hello, you must be Darnell?" the man asked, his voice polite yet authoritative. Darnell nodded, still looking bewildered. The man smiled and handed him the envelope. "The family of Mrs. Evelyn, the woman you helped, would like to invite you to visit their mansion. Here is an invitation, and if you agree, we can take you there today." Darnell opened the envelope and found a handwritten letter inside, expressing the family's sincere gratitude and inviting him to visit their mansion. Darnell was taken aback and felt a bit overwhelmed. He had never imagined that his simple act of kindness could lead to something like this. He looked at his mother, Clara, who nodded and smiled, as if encouraging him to accept the invitation. After a moment's thought, Darnell agreed. The well-dressed man invited him into the car, and to the astonishment of the neighbors, the Rolls Royce slowly drove away, taking Darnell to a place he had never dreamed of visiting. The Rolls Royce carried Darnell away from his impoverished neighborhood, heading towards the city center with towering buildings and wide streets. The car passed through large iron gates and onto a cobblestone path lined with lush green trees. Before him stood a grand mansion with magnificent classical architecture. large windows, and sprawling gardens filled with vibrant flowers. As the car stopped at the mansion's entrance, Darnell stepped out, overwhelmed by the beauty and luxury surrounding him. The mansion's grand doors opened, and a distinguished-looking middle-aged man stepped out to greet him. "Hello, you must be Darnell? I'm Marcus, Evelyn's son," he said warmly, with a friendly smile. Darnell bowed politely, feeling a bit out of place. Marcus gestured for Darnell to come inside. They entered a spacious living room with high ceilings and beautiful paintings on the walls. Inside, Mrs. Evelyn sat in a large armchair, her eyes lighting up as she saw Darnell. "There you are," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for helping me. You have no idea how grateful I am." Darnell walked over and gently held her frail hands. "I'm so glad you found your family," he said, his voice catching with emotion. Marcus stood nearby, nodding with a look of deep appreciation. "If it weren't for you, my mother might still be wandering out there, and we can't imagine what might have happened. Our family is incredibly thankful, and we want you to know that you are always welcome here." Warmth spread through Darnell's heart. He had never imagined that his small act of kindness would lead to such a significant change. Marcus invited him to sit down, and they began talking about life, family, and the hardships each of them had faced. Darnell realized that, despite their differences in social status, they shared common values, love, and compassion. Marcus then offered to give Darnell a tour around the mansion. They walked through spacious rooms, each decorated with intricate and artistic designs. Marcus shared the history of the mansion, the stories behind the paintings, and the valuable antique pieces. Darnell listened with fascination, feeling like he was stepping into a world he had only ever dreamed of. At the end of the tour, Marcus led Darnell to a smaller room with a piano in the corner. "My mother loves to play the piano," Marcus said, looking over as Mrs. Evelyn approached. "And I believe she wants to play a song today to thank you." Mrs. Evelyn sat down at the piano, placing her hands on the keys, and a gentle, soothing melody filled the room. Darnell sat there, listening to the music, feeling as though all his life's worries and fatigue were melting away. He knew that this day was special, one that would be etched in his memory forever. After Mrs. Evelyn finished playing, the room fell into an emotionally charged silence. She looked at Darnell with eyes full of affection and said, "Do you realize that your actions saved my life?" Darnell was slightly taken aback by her words, but she continued, "I was lost for days, with no one noticing or offering help. If it hadn't been for you, I might have been in serious danger. I can't even remember how far I wandered, and each day that passed, I felt more confused and hopeless." Marcus, sitting nearby, nodded and added, "After you took my mother to the police station, they were able to contact us. At that time, we were searching everywhere for her, fearing the worst might have happened." Mrs. Evelyn placed her hand on Darnell's, her eyes glistening with tears. "You have no idea how relieved I was to see my family walk into that police station. You are a hero to me and to our entire family." Darnell was moved by their heartfelt gratitude. He had never imagined that such a simple act could save someone's life. "I'm just happy you're safe, ma'am. That's what matters most," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Marcus stood up, extending his hand to Darnell. "Our family doesn't want to thank you with words alone. We want you to know that you'll always have a place in our hearts. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to come to us." After their conversation, Marcus led Darnell to the garden at the back of the mansion. The expansive garden was filled with rare, blooming flowers, creating a dreamlike scene. At the center of the garden was a fountain, its gentle, flowing water producing a soothing sound. Marcus and Darnell strolled through the garden, sharing stories about their lives and the challenges they had both faced. Stopping by the fountain, Marcus turned to Darnell and said, "I know life hasn't been easy for you. I can sense that you're a hardworking person, always willing to help others. That's why our family wants to do something to support you. We've prepared a special scholarship for you, so you can pursue higher education and build a brighter future." Darnell couldn't believe his ears. He looked at Marcus, his face filled with surprise. I don't know what to say. I was just doing what I thought was right." Marcus smiled. "Yes, but your kindness and compassion changed my mother's life. Now, we want to repay that kindness." Mrs. Evelyn slowly approached, holding a small gift box. She handed it to Darnell and said, "Please accept this gift as a token of our family's gratitude." Darnell opened the box and found a beautifully crafted gold watch inside, engraved with Mrs. Evelyn's name and the words, "With eternal gratitude." Holding the watch, Darnell felt a lump in his throat, overwhelmed with emotion, unable to find the words to express his feelings. After receiving the gift, Marcus invited Darnell to stay for dinner at the mansion. First, Darnell hesitated, feeling slightly out of place amidst such luxury and formality. But seeing the sincere looks from Mrs. Evelyn and Marcus, he decided to accept the invitation. Together, they entered the grand dining room, where a table was elegantly set with an array of sumptuous dishes and intricate decor. The dinner was warm and intimate. Mrs. Evelyn shared stories about Marcus's childhood and the challenges they faced while building their lives. Marcus spoke of the trials in his career and the life lessons he'd learned along the way. Darnell listened, feeling as though he were part of this family. He could sense the love and unity between Mrs. Evelyn's family members, and it filled him with a comforting warmth. As dinner came to a close, Marcus invited Darnell and his family to visit the mansion more often. "You and your family are always welcome here. Anytime you'd like, you can come here to rest and relax," Marcus said, his eyes sincere. Mrs. Evelyn nodded in agreement. "Yes, our home will always be open to people like you." Darnell's heart filled with gratitude and happiness. He had never imagined that his life could take such a turn. He promised Mrs. Evelyn and Marcus that he would return and expressed his desire for his family to meet such wonderful people as well. After leaving Mrs. Evelyn's mansion, Darnell returned home with a heart full of excitement. He couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened, the gratitude of Mrs. Evelyn's family and the opportunities they had offered him. Felt as though his life had turned a new page, and he felt a renewed motivation to strive for a better future. The next day, Darnell shared everything with his mother and sister. Clara and little Mia were both overjoyed and proud of him. "You did a good deed, and that's why you've been rewarded like this," Clara said, her eyes full of love. Mia eagerly asked Darnell about the mansion, the beautiful flowers, and the luxurious Rolls Royce. Smiling, Darnell recounted every detail to his sister, leaving her wide-eyed with amazement. Not long after, Marcus arranged for Darnell to receive the promised special scholarship. This scholarship allowed him to continue his studies without worrying about costs. It was an opportunity he had never dared to dream of, and he knew he had to seize it to change the lives of himself and his family. Darnell began studying harder than ever. He didn't just want to gain knowledge. He wanted to become someone who could help others, just as he had been helped. Inspired by Mrs. Evelyn and Marcus, he threw himself into his classes, attended workshops, and worked tirelessly to expand his understanding of management and business. Darnell's family life also improved. Clara no longer had to worry about making ends meet, and Mia now had access to better learning opportunities. They had more time to spend together, enjoying meals and sharing small joys. Darnell felt happiness watching his family's life transform, knowing that it all began with a single act of kindness for a lost woman on the street. Darnell also kept in regular contact with Mrs. Evelyn's family. They frequently invited him to visit the mansion, and each time he went, he felt the warmth and affection they extended to him. He realized that sometimes a small act of kindness, a selfless gesture, could lead to great changes and forge valuable connections in life. Not long after receiving the scholarship, Darnell received a special invitation from Marcus, who offered him a part-time position at his company. Marcus believed that combining study with real-world experience would help Darnell develop more comprehensively and gain deeper insights into the business world. Darnell was thrilled by the opportunity. Working at a billionaire's company was something he had never imagined, and he knew it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. On his first day at work, Darnell dressed in his best attire and arrived at the office. Marcus personally welcomed him and introduced him to his colleagues in the department. Initially, Darnell felt a bit nervous due to his lack of experience in a corporate environment. But with the support of Marcus and his coworkers, he gradually adapted and became more confident. Darnell's tasks started with simple duties like reviewing files, assisting with reports, and learning to use management software. Marcus often took time to guide Darnell, sharing valuable lessons from his own journey in business. Throughout his working days, Darnell felt he was learning a wealth of new things, not only professional skills but also ways of thinking, problem solving, and interpersonal skills. Thanks to his hard work and eagerness to learn, Darnell quickly gained the trust of Marcus and his colleagues. He began participating in small projects and felt fulfilled seeing his contributions make a difference in the company's success. Marcus was very pleased with Darnell and consistently encouraged him, saying, "You have great potential, Darnell. Keep striving and learning, and you'll achieve remarkable things." One day, Marcus gave Darnell a bigger challenge. He wanted Darnell to work with a team to develop a new marketing strategy for an upcoming product. This task required creativity and teamwork skills, and Darnell knew it was an opportunity to prove himself. However, he also felt the pressure, as it was an important assignment, and he didn't want to disappoint Marcus. In the first few days, Darnell faced many difficulties. He felt inexperienced and hesitant to contribute to discussions with team members who were experts in their fields. At times, he felt discouraged and wondered if he could handle the task. Yet, whenever he felt his motivation slipping, he remembered Marcus and Mrs. Evelyn's words of encouragement, that he could succeed if he believed in himself and kept pushing forward, determined to give his best. Darnell decided to invest more time into researching the product and learning about marketing strategies. He read books, searched for information online, and even sought advice from colleagues. Gradually, he began to feel more confident and made meaningful contributions to the team. His ideas, though simple, were practical and well received by everyone. After weeks of hard work, Darnell's team completed the marketing strategy and presented it to Marcus and the company's leadership. When the presentation ended, Marcus stood up and applauded, saying, "You've all done an excellent job. I'm proud of everyone's efforts, especially Darnell." Hearing Marcus's praise, Darnell felt as though all his efforts had paid off. He understood that challenges were simply part of the learning and growth process, and as long as he didn't give up, he could overcome any obstacle. During his time working at the company, Darnell made many new friends, one of whom was Julia, a smart and kind-hearted colleague in the marketing department. Julia helped Darnell a lot in adapting to the job and was always willing to share her valuable experience with him. Her easygoing and open demeanor made it easy for Darnell to work alongside her. Gradually, Darnell and Julia grew closer. They often had lunch together, sharing stories about their lives. Julia greatly admired Darnell's hard work and compassion. While Darnell was always grateful for Julia's support and guidance, they became not only good colleagues but also close friends, always ready to help each other through challenges. One time, Darnell encountered a problem at work and wasn't sure how to solve it. Julia spent the entire evening after work sitting with Darnell, helping him analyze the situation and find a solution. Thanks to her assistance, Darnell not only resolved the issue but also learned new skills. He realized the immense value of having good friends by his side, and he cherished this friendship deeply. Julia also helped Darnell view life from a more positive perspective. She often encouraged him to take time for himself and enjoy the small joys in life, rather than focusing solely on work and studies. With Julia's influence, Darnell learned to balance work and personal life, which made him much happier. During a visit to Mrs. Evelyn's mansion, Darnell had the chance to talk more with Marcus and learn about their family's past. Marcus revealed that Mrs. Evelyn had once been a famous pianist. In her youth, She performed on many grand stages and was admired by many. However, after an unexpected accident, Mrs. Evelyn lost her memory and had to abandon her career. It was a huge shock for her, and the family had struggled greatly to help her get through that difficult time. Darnell listened to the story with deep empathy. He understood that behind Mrs. Evelyn's strong exterior lay a past filled with hardship and sorrow. Losing her memory had taken away the career she once passionately pursued, but it hadn't taken away her kindness and love for others. She had overcome everything to continue living and had become a woman whom everyone admired today. Marcus also shared that this accident was why Mrs. Evelyn was always willing to help those in need. She knew the feeling of being lost and unsure of one's identity, and that's why she always extended compassion to the vulnerable. Darnell felt incredibly fortunate to have met Mrs. Evelyn and to be part of such an inspiring story. After the conversation, Darnell felt even more admiration and respect for Mrs. Evelyn. He understood that life isn't always smooth, but it's how we face challenges that defines our true worth. Mrs. Evelyn had taught him a valuable lesson in resilience and compassion, and Darnell knew he would carry these lessons with him throughout his life. After learning the touching story of Mrs. Evelyn's past, Darnell came up with the idea of organizing a charity event to help the homeless and those in need. He thought of Mrs. Evelyn's experience of being lost on the street and realized that many others were in similar situations, requiring assistance. One evening at the mansion, he shared his idea with Marcus and Mrs. Evelyn. Marcus listened intently to Darnell's idea, nodding in approval. "You have a kind heart, Darnell. Let's do this together." Mrs. Evelyn, her eyes shining with pride, added, "Yes, we won't just be helping those around us. We'll be bringing hope to them. I believe each of us can change someone's life with small but heartfelt acts." Darnell began detailing the plans for the charity event. He worked alongside Marcus and the company team to list the necessary supplies, organize distribution points, and recruit volunteers. He also reached out to social organizations and other benefactors to gather support. Throughout the preparation, Darnell felt a profound joy and purpose, knowing he was doing something truly meaningful. In the days leading up to the event, Darnell, Julia, and their colleagues worked tirelessly to prepare everything. They organized gift boxes, sorted supplies, and ensured all was ready for the big day. Julia fully committed herself to the effort, standing by Darnell and helping him complete the final tasks. Darnell felt immense support and friendship from everyone, which only fueled his determination even more. The day of the charity event finally arrived. The venue was a large park in the city, a place where the homeless often gathered. Volunteers, including Marcus's company employees, had arrived early in the morning to set everything up. Long tables were lined with gift packages, hot food, and essential supplies. The atmosphere in the park was filled with excitement and warmth. Standing before the crowd, Darnell felt an indescribable pride as he saw the smiles and hopeful gazes of those receiving help. He began his speech, sharing why he had wanted to organize this event and the importance of sharing with those in need. The crowd applauded enthusiastically when he finished, and Darnell felt his heart swell with joy and gratitude. Marcus and Mrs. Evelyn were also present at the event, moving through the crowd, talking and sharing with the homeless individuals. Mrs. Evelyn especially took time to listen to each person's story, offering sincere words of encouragement. Seeing her compassionately seated next to those in need deeply moved Darnell. He understood that Mrs. Evelyn wasn't only giving material help but also giving from her heart. Julia, too, was all smiles as she assisted everyone. She stayed by Darnell's side, supporting him in every activity. Together, they handed out gifts, chatted with those who came for assistance, and felt the joy that came from bringing happiness to others. Darnell felt incredibly fortunate to have such good friends like Julia and supportive colleagues. The charity event was a resounding success. After that day, many homeless individuals felt renewed hope for life. They received food, clothing, and essential supplies, but more importantly, they felt the warmth and care from the community. Darnell realized that the charity event not only aided those in need, but also fostered a connection within the community, bringing people closer and creating a sense of solidarity. After the event, Darnell became well known in the community. People recognized him as a passionate and compassionate young man. Local media covered the event, and many expressed their gratitude for what Darnell and Mrs. Evelyn's family had done. While this recognition made Darnell proud, he remained humble, always attributing the event's success to the collective effort from Marcus, Mrs. Evelyn, Julia, to all the volunteers. Marcus was very pleased with the event and decided to make it an annual charity initiative to support the community. He told Darnell, "You've started something wonderful, and I want to continue it with you. This will be an essential part of our company's mission." Hearing these words, Darnell felt deeply honored and happy. He knew he had contributed to something meaningful and impactful. Mrs. Evelyn was equally proud of Darnell. She often told him that kindness and compassion were the greatest strengths a person could possess. "You've done something truly wonderful, Darnell. I am so proud of you," she said, her eyes shining with pride and affection. After the charity event, Darnell and Julia's relationship grew even closer. They had shared many memorable moments together, and gradually, both realized their feelings had surpassed the boundaries of friendship. Darnell always felt at ease and genuinely happy when he was with Julia. She was someone who truly understood him and was always there to share in both the joys and challenges of life. One evening, after work, Julia invited Darnell to dinner at a small restaurant on the corner. They sat together, chatting and laughing as they had so many times before, but this time, in the cozy atmosphere of the restaurant, with candlelight flickering, Darnell felt his heart racing. He decided it was time to express what he'd been holding in his heart. "Julia, I want to tell you something," Darnell said hesitantly. Julia looked up, her eyes bright in the candlelight. "I know we've been good friends for a long time, and I cherish that, but I think my feelings have gone beyond friendship. I really care about you. Julia, would you consider giving us a chance?" Julia was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "I feel the same way, Darnell. I've been waiting for you to say this for a long time." Darnell felt as if his heart might burst with happiness. He took Julia's hand, and together, they shared that beautiful, meaningful moment. From that day on, their relationship blossomed into one filled with love and deep connection. Darnell and Julia continued to support each other in both work and life. They became a beloved couple in the company, and everyone could see the genuine affection they had for each other. Julia always stood by Darnell, encouraging and supporting him in every project and endeavor. In turn, Darnell cherished Julia, knowing she was the one who helped him grow and gave him the drive to keep moving forward. Every weekend, Darnell and Julia spent time together, whether walking in the park, watching movies, or visiting Mrs. Evelyn. They enjoyed life's simple pleasures together, and Darnell knew he had found someone truly special, someone he wanted by his side for the rest of his life. The days with Julia made Darnell feel that his life was complete and truly happy. After Darnell and Julia's relationship officially took a new turn, Darnell's life became even more fulfilling and happy. Julia was not only his companion at work, but also the person he could rely on whenever he faced difficulties. They shared everything in life with each other, from joys and sorrows to dreams and plans for the future. One weekend, Darnell decided to introduce Julia to his mother and younger sister. This was a significant step in their relationship, and Darnell wanted his family to meet Julia and understand more about this special person in his life. When they arrived, Clara and little Mia welcomed Julia with warmth and friendliness. Clara immediately took a liking to Julia, sensing the genuine affection she had for her son. The family dinner that evening was filled with laughter and warmth. Julia blended in effortlessly, chatting easily with everyone. She and Mia quickly became close, with Mia eagerly sharing stories about her school life and the small joys she experienced. Watching this scene, Darnell felt his heart warm like never before. He knew that Julia was an important part of his life and now, of his family as well. After the gathering, Clara told Darnell, "Julia is wonderful, son. I'm so happy you found such a great partner." Hearing these words, Darnell felt incredibly grateful and joyful. He understood that family meant everything to him, and knowing Julia was loved by them brought him a deep sense of peace and happiness. One afternoon, while Darnell was working at the office, Marcus called him into his office. Sitting behind his desk, Marcus looked at Darnell with pride and sincerity. "Darnell, you've worked very hard and proven your capabilities. I have a proposal for you," Marcus said. Darnell was a bit surprised and curious about what Marcus would say next. Marcus continued, "I want you to become my partner in a new project for the company. This is a big opportunity, and I believe you're ready to take on this role." Darnell could hardly believe his ears. He felt both astonished and deeply moved. Marcus trusted him enough to invite him to be a partner, something Darnell had never dared to dream of. After a moment's thought, Darnell nodded. "I'm honored by your offer, and I'll do my best not to let you down." Marcus smiled and replied, "I know you will. I believe in you, Darnell." Darnell took on his new role with determination and enthusiasm. He worked alongside Marcus and the team to develop the new project. Despite the many challenges that came with the job, Darnell always gave his all. Julia was by his side, offering constant support and encouragement. Her words helped Darnell push through the pressures of work, and he knew he was never alone on this journey. The new project that Marcus and Darnell had been working on for months was finally ready for its launch. It was an important project, not only for the company but also for the community. Darnell and Marcus had put in countless hours to ensure everything would go smoothly. As the launch day arrived, Darnell felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The event took place in a luxurious hotel, attended by various partners and important guests. Darnell joined Marcus on stage as Marcus introduced the new project. During his part of the presentation, Darnell spoke about the development process and the benefits the project would bring to the community. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, and Darnell felt a deep sense of accomplishment, as though all his efforts had truly paid off. After the event, Marcus approached Darnell and said, "You did an excellent job. I'm so proud of you." Darnell felt as if he were living in a dream. He had overcome challenges and proven his abilities. He knew that this success wasn't his alone. It was the result of the support and encouragement he'd received from Marcus, Julia, and everyone who had stood by him along the way. After the project wrapped up, Darnell decided to spend more quality time with Julia, wanting to make up for the time they had sacrificed for work. One afternoon, he took her to a large park, a place where they had once shared many walks and conversations in the early days of their relationship. They sat on a bench, watching children play and couples stroll hand in hand. Turning to Julia, Darnell looked into her eyes and said, "Julia, you've always been by my side, supporting and sharing in my joys and sorrows. I can't imagine my life without you. I want us to be together, not just today but for all the days to come." Julia smiled, her eyes welling up with tears. "I want that too, Darnell. You're the one I've been searching for, and I know we're meant to be together." Darnell then pulled a small box from his pocket, revealing a beautiful ring inside. He knelt before Julia and asked, "Julia, will you marry me?" Julia nodded, overcome with emotion, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Darnell, I will." Darnell stood up and embraced her, both wrapped in boundless happiness. They felt as if every moment they had shared had led to this perfect moment. After the proposal, Darnell and Julia shared the joyous news with their families and friends. Clara and Mia were thrilled to hear the news. Clara said, "I knew you had found the one you truly love, and I wish you both eternal happiness." Marcus and Mrs. Evelyn also congratulated the couple, assuring them that they would always support whatever decisions they made together. The story of Darnell, Julia, and Mrs. Evelyn's family became a beautiful example of the power of love and compassion. Darnell and Julia held a small but warm wedding, surrounded by family and close friends. Their wedding took place in a lovely garden, filled with lush greenery and singing birds, creating a magical setting for their special day. During the ceremony, Darnell spoke. "Life hasn't always been easy, but you've always been there, helping me overcome every challenge. I believe that love and kindness can change the world, and I want us to spread that together." Julia looked at him with deep love and replied, "I've always believed we can accomplish great things, as long as we continue to love and support each other." After the wedding, Darnell and Julia continued to dedicate themselves to their work and charitable activities. Alongside Marcus and Mrs. Evelyn, they organized more charity events to support those in need within the community. Each event brought joy and hope to those they helped, and Darnell felt fulfilled knowing he was doing something meaningful. Darnell's family now enjoyed a stable and happy life. They no longer had to worry about financial struggles, and Darnell felt deeply grateful for the blessings that had come their way. He understood that all of this began with one simple act of kindness, when he chose to help Mrs. Evelyn on that cold day. That small action changed his life, bringing him wonderful friends, a true love, and a life full of happiness. Darnell and Julia lived happily together, always reminding themselves that love and compassion were the most important things in life. They remained ready to help others, to share goodness, and to spread love wherever they went. Their story became an inspiration to many, a reminder that with just one act of kindness, we can change not only our own lives but also the lives of those around us.